Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday, Haley. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, Dan.
You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. I'm Dan Hansen.
I'm Haley Johnson.
And we're here to dish out all kinds of good stuff. All kinds of good stuff today, Haley. Not that any other week
I like that you said
is
dish
less.
out.
I know. I was trying to move past that as quickly as possible. It's funny how the brain works, you know?
Yeah.
What Haley's
Talking
referring
about
to
cooking.
is we're going to talk about cooking. Yes, let's just jump right into that because we're already there. The rest of the show, it's going to be spectacular. You're not going to want to miss it. The best ever, right? The best to date?
Well,
It's going to be good.
always-
It's going to be good.
Every show is the best show.
Right. They're all my children, and I love them all equally.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about cooking specifically. I want to talk about cooking with cast iron.
Yes.
It's a thing that there's a group of people, not just
it.
right, not just pioneers, not just the children or descendants of pioneers, but regular people love it for a number of reasons. And then there's other people that have steered away from it for
Right.
a number of other reasons. And fortunately, Haley has kind of jumped into it. So we're going to get the scoop from
Yeah.
Haley. Let's first start with just some of the benefits. Why in the world would you go to cast iron and fill your cupboards with these horribly heavy items? Well, there's a number of things. First off, they're incredibly durable.
Right. Exactly. They last for generations. Right?
In fact, you could be cooking on one that the pioneers cooked on,
It's true.
right?
If someone took care of it, absolutely.
It could still be here. So incredibly durable.
Yeah.
I've got stuff that it feels it's very disposable. You know, especially how I treat my normal cookware.
Especially with like the Teflon or like the non-stick
It starts
coating
flaking
stuff.
off.
Yeah, it just doesn't last very long.
No, and it's not good to eat. It
Right?
doesn't taste good. It's probably not good for you. Don't dig into that part of things. Anyway, they're durable. They're going to last and last. They can be inexpensive. Buying cookware,
Yeah.
that is
it's
not...
really expensive.
Right. We had to take out a second mortgage
Oh my God.
just to get a nice set, and then I destroyed them right away. But cast iron, it's not inexpensive, but it's definitely
Yeah,
an easier buy-in.
In comparison to other things,
Yeah.
it's less expensive
Definitely.
and it lasts longer. So.
Lasts longer. You've got all of that. It retains heat very well. Retains heat
Yes.
very well. It's an important distinction between... Well, I'll get to that because
Yeah,
that's
we'll get
a
to that.
downside. So that's a positive. Let's see here. One more positive. It can deliver a nonstick surface.
Yes.
You know, you mentioned Teflon.
Right.
It's the holy grail. We want our eggs to
say,
come
yeah.
out of the pan.
I've been disappointed
cleanly.
with Teflon over and over again.
Well, you're a nitpicker, right? Right?
That's not true.
Okay, right. Yes. So Haley's been disappointed, but the idea of Teflon is
Yeah.
that it's going to release
Yes, that is
everything,
the idea,
and
yeah.
nothing's going to be as good as what we tell ourselves. This can be close. It's not going to be as good.
I think it might be better.
Okay. Now, most of the places online, I've not used a lot of it. The little bit that I have, I would say it's good and can be almost as good. And in fact, so much that it's negligible. I have not experienced that it's better. Haley's making that claim. We'll
a
get
bold
to it.
claim.
Yep, we'll get to it. Haley makes all kinds of bold claims. You guys are going to have to do with it what you want. All right, benefits. Now let's talk about a few negatives. Right off, they're not good conductors of heat. I talked about how they retain heat very well, but they don't conduct it very well. And that's been part of my experience. I'll put it on the stove. 5 years later, it's heated up enough, and I can actually cook on it now, right? It seems very slow to heat up compared to other things, and it's very localized heat. If the burner is
Yeah, you should
smaller,
match the burner to the size of the pan.
yes. Now, I've seen people use that to their benefit. Well, they'll push things on a great big pan to the outer edges when they don't want them to, they want them to stay warm, but they don't want them
Right.
to really
Continue to
overheat,
cook,
right? But, that's just not how you normally do things on a stove. So that's a negative. It can be, worked around. No problem. But it is a negative. They're heavy.
They are heavy.
Yeah, they're like iron, right? I mean, it's heavy stuff. Now, that can be good if burglars and things. I mean, it's the old school thing. You've got the
guess it's a
frying
weapon,
pan.
yeah.
Right.
That's
if
a
you
pro.
if you can lift it, I need 5 of us to get around the stove to move one off. But other than that, there are a lot of other positives. So it's heavy. Let's see here. The handles can get very hot because it's the same material. You need to plan for that. Don't forget that you're using a cast iron skillet
see
and just
people
grab the
forgetting.
handle. Oh, I've forgotten. That's no surprise to anybody listening.
Oh,
I've got the scars to prove it. But you can work around that. You
Yeah.
get little oven mitt things.
There's like the little
and
silicone things that you can slip on the handle too, and then
I've got a whole cooking outfit that I wear that's heat and flame resistant. I'm like bundled up. It's like winter
I wish that
in my
that
kitchen.
were true.
Yeah.
I really want to see that.
You think it's not true. Moving on. Cast iron skillets and pans, cast iron in general, requires seasoning. It's not just ready to go. Even the ones that say they're pre-seasoned,
Exactly. You're
you
still
should
supposed to
season those. All right. So pros, cons.
Yeah.
I think the pros outweigh the cons, personally.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Haley's experience, because Haley's husband, Jordan, was like geeked for this.
He was really, really excited. All he could see were the pros when it came to cast iron. I didn't realize that this was such a passion of his until he came home with a pair of cast iron skillets. And I was just like, what the heck?
Well, it's better than a puppy.
What are you doing? We already have pans. Like, I don't understand why we need more pans. He's like, no, I really want us to start cooking with cast iron. It's better. It's
All right.
way better. And he listed, all the things that you just talked about and left out all of the negatives, right?
Of course, that's how you sell something.
And all I could see were the negatives because I have this impression of them being really high maintenance, and I didn't want to have to deal with that or learn about them in order to use the pan. I already know pans that I have.
Right.
Let's just keep using those. And then I also could not understand how something that people warn against using soap and water on could be sanitary. Like, it did not make sense to my brain.
Right, because you're not supposed to clean these, clearly, like you just said, with soap and water, right?
That's what people say.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've all heard
We'll
that.
talk
I've heard
about
that.
it. Yeah.
All right,
But-
so Jordan comes home with a big surprise for Haley.
Yes.
all
And I
these
was
pans.
like, no, return them. Like, we already have fans. But he forged ahead. He decided that he was
He
gonna...
didn't obey?
No.
Oh,
No.
the minute you...
He agreed.
Oh.
Okay, we'll return them. I kept the receipt. They stayed on top of the fridge for like a week.
Oh,
I
he
think
played that game.
Yep. He figured I'd forget about them eventually. Then when I wasn't home,
He started
he
seasoning.
started seasoning.
Yeah,
them.
then it's done.
Yeah, it's done. It's over.
Okay.
We're keeping them.
All right, so you've got them now. Where do you want to go with this? How you made a lot of bold claims, and I want to hold you to that. You said
Yes.
better than Teflon. We'll get to that.
Well, and I think the seasoning part is important, right? Like, you've got to take the time because they are, I said I didn't want to use them because I think they're high maintenance. And I think in some ways they kind of are. Like, you've got to take these steps for them to work well. And seasoning them is the first one where you've got to like coat the entire pan in oil, then you heat it up slowly, and then you let it cool down and wipe off all the excess oil. And then you do that again, like 4 times of letting this heat up and then cool back down, and then heat up and more oil, on and on, until you've got it seasoned. And essentially, you're creating that non-stick coating on it because those oils are soaking into the pores of the cast iron. And what they do eventually is like create this fatty polymer, I guess.
Yeah, polymerization it's called.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it creates this like rock solid layer that water is not going to penetrate. And that's where you get the non-stick from.
So there's good things that fat does for us.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm coated with it, so that should help.
You're non-stick too.
Yeah. I'm slippery, that's for sure.
Gosh. No,
All right.
it's true, and it has worked, because that was the second thing. He's like, okay, now I'm going to cook on them. I'm going to prove that these are better. And so he cooked a steak dinner, and I was really surprised. I actually thought that it tasted better. It had like that nice sear that people talk about.
That's what you get with the heat retention.
Right.
Is you can heat up your normal pans and then throw like your cold food in there and it will cool the pan down. It won't hold the heat as well as cast iron will. It's going to retain that heat and everything just moves ahead exactly the way you want it, and you get that nice sear on everything. You get that crust.
Yes, exactly.
Which normally, when associating, the word crust with food, I don't know that normally sounds
Sometimes
great to me.
Sometimes they cut the crust off. So.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. In this instance, it's desirable.
Yes.
You want the crust on your steaks or whatever.
Well, that color, like it's the kind of color that you get off of a grill. And I didn't expect it to be so easy for us to achieve that. I thought, like, you've got to know what you're doing in order to achieve that kind of looking steak.
So you got good results on it.
Yes.
You like it in that regard. The seasoning was a process.
Yeah. And
but not the end of the world.
Fan. We had
stinky.
to air out the house, and I was not happy. But
absolutely.
we got over it.
You got through all of that. No stick? You claimed better.
Did not stick. And then
How about
the
eggs?
next morning, he made steak and eggs.
All right.
Because that's the thing that I think always sticks to the Teflon, even though it's not supposed to. Like, you see those commercials where it's like, oh, the egg just slides right off.
Right.
I've never experienced
It's not a real egg.
No. And with the cast iron, they do not stick to the pan like they would the Teflon.
At least yours.
that's-
You've seasoned
yeah.
them very well then.
Right.
You've done a good job.
I've
Does
done
that need to
well
be
seasoned.
maintained?
You do have to maintain, and that's
Whoa, whoa,
part of
wait,
the cleaning.
whoa. Jordan, this is for you. Haley, you said you've done a good job seasoning. Everything I heard is that Jordan did the seasoning.
Well, so it's been a week now of me cooking on these.
Oh, so you took
Because
it over.
I was like, okay, maybe I like this. Like, he did a good job with them, and Jordan's not the chef in our house.
Okay.
You
So
know?
sorry, Jordan, that I even brought this to light because I could have let you just go and be the hero, but no.
So I've been cooking the meals on them since because I got curious. Like, okay, maybe they're not so bad. I'll just try using them. They're already out on top of the stove.
Can you handle it with the weight restrictions you've got?
I don't
Right?
really have to move them.
Okay.
You know, like they just stay
Oh, they
there.
just sit there.
Yeah.
What about cleaning? Last thing you mentioned you're
Yeah,
worried
I
about
was
that being
really
sanitary.
Worried about that. It's not so bad. I looked into it, and the reason that you don't need to use the soap and water, you can apparently. It's okay for you to do that. You just have to make sure that you're drying them really, really well, and then putting oil
Getting the
back
soap
on
out.
them.
That's not yummy. Even in a crust, that's not good.
But you have to re-oil them after you've washed them with soap and water.
And then heat them, right?
Exactly. And so you could just skip all of that with the soap and water, just add oil back into them. You kind of just like use a wood spatula to get any of the food,
The goodies.
you know.
Scrape off the goodies, people. Scrape them
any
all
scraps
off.
that are there, you know, just get all that stuff off.
Put them in a little Ziploc bag, and you can munch on those during your favorite show.
Put it in the loamy. Little composter.
So you
No,
get those
but
all
you
off,
get
put
that
more
off.
oil on.
Put the oil back on, heat it up a little bit, rub some salt into it, and just wipe anything that's excess with a paper towel, and it's clean. And the idea is that because there's no food left over, there's nothing actually continuing to harbor the bacteria.
All right.
Because bacteria, I guess, doesn't live in the oils that we're using. Like olive oil, for example, we leave it on our shelves. We don't have to refrigerate it. It's because it's not going to harbor bacteria for us.
Oh.
So the same is true on the cast iron.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah. It makes
So
sense.
I got lucky on that one. I wonder how many other things are just growing all sorts
Oh
of
my
bacteria.
gosh. How many things do you not refrigerate?
Let's just move on
All
because
right.
there's a lot in
Yeah.
that cupboard that maybe should be refrigerated. I'm going to start reading labels when I get home. Anyway, cast iron. Haley approved.
Yeah, I really
Haley
liked it.
tested and Haley approved.
Yeah.
But only a week.
Only a week.
So we
we'll
will
have to revisit.
We will revisit. We've got a number of things to revisit. You mentioned Lomi.
Yes.
Your
We're going to revisit that as well.
Yes, and a number of other things that Haley's made bold claims about.
Yeah.
Have they held up?
Right.
Have things that I've talked about held up? We'll talk about those on another show,
Yeah.
another spectacular episode coming up. Right now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a sale on color samples.
Yes.
Benjamin Moore color
50%
samples.
off.
Right. We'll tell you why you want to get those coming up next. Stay tuned. Well, everybody, you're in for a treat. I've got a frog in my throat. Haley's got an eyelash in her eye.
We're falling apart.
We're falling apart. She's busy, peeling back her eyelid. It was horrible to look at.
I do not peel back my eyelids.
Whatever
That
you were doing.
freaks me out when people do
Digging,
that.
digging at her eyeball, trying
I was
to
surprised
extract.
you could make the dad joke because I said I've got an eyelash in my eye and immediately started putting my finger in my eye, and I expected you to go for the you've got a finger in your eye.
No, no, I'm an adult, Haley. I was too busy trying to choke down whatever stuck in my throat. Anyway,
problems.
I'm sure everybody is loving hearing about that on a Saturday morning. Brought to you by the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show. You're welcome. Let's talk about color samples. We told everybody at the end of last segment
Right.
that we had some on sale. Well, not just some, all of them are on sale.
And really on sale. I mean, 50% off.
50% off. We talk about the sample half pints all the time. You can get any Benjamin Moore color
Right.
in these sample half pints very inexpensively. Take it home, see it on your wall, see it on the surface that you're going to paint
Right.
before you make your color decision.
Well, and I think it's interesting too. We talk about them all the time, but so many people still don't understand the purpose necessarily of those sample
The purpose or the
half-pints.
value,
Right.
I would think.
Because some people think that it's just a small amount of paint to use for a small project, but really these are meant so that you can have the absolute best knowledge going forward that you are making the right color choice.
Yeah.
Because color changes so dramatically.
If you could see Haley, you would be buying them right now just because she would scare you. She's got her hands clenched and she's just shaking them. Yeah, it looks like you're shaking a small person.
Yeah, maybe
like me, like I'm being manhandled. I feel like I'm being manhandled across the table. Demanded that I buy these things. No, it's really valuable. It's a very inexpensive way to make sure you're not making a mistake.
Right, because
color-wise.
Color chips are one thing. You know, those little color chips that we get off the rack in the store, those can be helpful as a starting point. And we've got larger sheets even that sometimes people think, well, I've got this big sheet of color. I'm not going to paint much bigger than that. And that's really not true either. One, it's not real paint. That's still printed color, so it's not the same as what your paint will be ultimately. There are slight differences.
Even the color chips, they all say that right on the back.
Yeah.
It's just a representation as close as we can get with inks. Real paint is going to give you a slightly different look because it's real paint, but also because it's on the surface that you're literally going to be painting it on.
Exactly.
And that makes a difference. Texture does.
Texture makes such a difference. If you have texture on your walls, if you're painting brick outside, you know, so many things come into play. And the angle of that texture, the way that it bounces the light back, is how you're perceiving that color. And it actually changes the color pretty dramatically sometimes.
So the color samples are a really big deal. It's a really good way to go. It's a nice safety net.
Yes.
And a lot of us avoid them. We avoid them for different reasons. I think part of it is it feels like extra work.
Yes.
A lot of us feel like, you know what? I got this. I know what I'm doing. You know, we're going to be talking about some contractor appreciation events that we're doing. It's Contractor Appreciation Month. I've got all of that. We're going to be talking about that in the next segment.
Yeah.
But we were just at, Haley and I, we were just at our Lakewood location doing one of these events, hosting a lunch. And if you were paying attention, Haley, you would have noticed that I was perusing the color rack.
I did not.
So you weren't paying attention to me.
I
like to think that the eyes of the world are upon me when I'm doing things because I might do something cool.
I think I'm pretty observant too, so I'm a little disappointed as well.
Anyway, if you had been paying attention, and you should have been, you would have noticed I was at the color rack and I was going to get ready to get some paint for a room at home. Now, I hadn't brought the samples home. I just figured I could do it.
So you were just starting the process.
Just starting all the things that we say not to do. I know that I shouldn't do them, and yet I kept telling myself, this will be easy. I just need to get this kind of a color. You know, there's some hardwood flooring on the floor, but it looks kind of like this sample because the store had some stain samples. I was making all this, jumps in my mind because I figured I work with color on a regular basis. I know it. I can carry that memory of the color in my mind, and I make the right choice.
You wanted to move forward.
I was right in the store. I didn't want to go home and then come back. Fortunately, I didn't do it because I brought the samples that I was thinking about home. They weren't good. So if you're that person, you think you've got it, right now especially is the time to give it a try. They're $2.99 for the samples, a great way to make sure you're making the right choice.
Exactly. Just don't risk it. Paint's expensive. You don't want to make the wrong choice.
Right. And another way that you can save a little money this month at RepcoLite is, and every month, honestly, we've got a DIY savings program. We've got one for contractors too, but it's a text messaging thing. You get one text a month, one single text, and it will give you a savings for that particular month. This month, it's a $10 off any purchase.
Yeah.
So head into any RepcoLite store, ask them about it. They'll sign you up and help you sign up. Or you can go to RepcoLite.com and I'll have information there. Anyway, we wanted to get that info out there.
Save some money this month.
We have done that. Now we're going to take a break. The Detroit listeners, you're going to get a RepcoLite Rewind. Grand Rapids, it's news and weather at the bottom of the hour. And then when we're all back together, we're going to be talking about how to hire a contractor and get the best results possible. That's all just ahead. Stick around. Well, Haley, we've gone viral on YouTube. You're listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And yes, we have a YouTube channel that we've kind of been negligent with for the last month.
Yeah, we had started doing the YouTube as part of our podcast recording. So we would post the podcast after we aired the show, and we would also post the show on YouTube.
A lot of work.
I
didn't like having the cameras pointed at me all the time.
And did not like
I didn't mind having the cameras pointed at me. I didn't like looking at the result of what the cameras recorded.
Yeah.
I like to think that I look different and carry myself differently. Right. No, reality blew. So for that and a number of reasons, we kind of just backed away. They weren't getting views. It's
And
why do it?
It took time,
Blah, 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 all that whining. And anyway, I haven't looked at it for a long time. I haven't paid attention to it.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to pretend that it didn't exist. Well, I checked it out this morning, and we've got a video that's it's still small scale compared to other people, but for us,
Very
it's
quickly,
huge.
It's
right.
gone from 10 views to
30, almost 3,600 at this point. And I'd love to say that it was about paint. Wouldn't that be great? No, it's about PEX plumbing, PEX
And
pipes, and mice.
Yeah.
Right. And there's all these comments asking us questions about that plumbers need to answer. That scared me. Anyway, maybe we'll go back to YouTube at some point. But I do think it's kind of funny.
It is funny.
That has happened. Right now, we want to talk about hiring a contractor. And right now, we're celebrating Contractor Appreciation Month.
Right.
In all of our stores.
All month long.
Yeah, contractors make the world go round, and they make the RepcoLite world go round by all means. And we want to do everything we can to let them know that we appreciate it. And because of some of the conversations that we've had at those events,
right.
We want to talk about what it takes to hire a contractor and get the best results possible.
Well, and now's the right time to have this conversation, too, because you do want to start early. A lot of us hire contractors for summer jobs, whether we're painting, the entire house inside or painting the exterior of the house. And it's hard for us to remember that you've got to buffer in some time so that they can schedule those things out far enough in advance.
Right. There are other people in the world and they also hire people. So that's the first tip, is just start early. And a second tip is to start with us. And there's a reason for that. We work with painters, contractors on a regular basis. We know who's open and we know who's busy. We can help you connect to the right people rather than just...
we know them.
Right.
Right?
By all means. So stop out at any RepcoLite location. Tell us what you're working on, and we can get you some names. Or you can go to RepcoLite.com, and there's an online form right on the homepage. It says Find a Contractor. All you need to do is fill out what you're looking for, where you live, and we'll connect you with 3 names of people in your area who do that kind of work and possibly could work you into their schedule. So start with us. One thing I want to say about that before we move on to the other points.
Yeah.
We run into this all the time. People will hear about contractors because there are contractors that are booked solid. We're finding that at these events that we're at. They're coming for lunches.
Right.
And we're talking to people who are booked solid through a lot of the year. And then we're talking to other contractors who had all of their projects, all of their lined up clients kind of drop out and bail out for economic reasons.
Exactly.
And so we'll talk to customers who are looking to hire, and we'll say, well, this person is looking to get some, has some availability. And the knee-jerk reaction will be, well, I don't know that I want somebody who's looking. Maybe I should go to the busy people because they're the better ones. And it's just not the case.
Right, exactly. They're not any difference in quality that we're talking to. It just happens to be that they booked jobs where people later decided that they no longer wanted to stay on the schedule because they just couldn't afford to hire them for the summer.
Yeah, so there are a lot of good painters out there who are looking to fill their schedules right now. So that's good news for a lot of us. So start with us. We'll help you connect. Now let's move into some literal not step by step, but some good tips to make sure you get the best results possible. And the first one is going to be get multiple quotes.
Exactly. You always want to price shop a little bit, right? At least get a few. That way you can compare them and you've got some things to look at and decide based off of those interactions.
Right. We always recommend 3. That's a really good way to go because you do have that comparison factor. 2, you could have one that, both could be
right, exactly
on either end of the spectrum. That third one really helps balance things. And this is also why you want to start early, because you want to give yourself time to get these quotes in and process them, because you don't just look at the price. Some of us do. But none of us should just look at the price. You've got to look at the details. Some contractors will itemize their quotes. So you'll get a quote that just spells everything out,
right?
Line by line.
How much the primer, how much masking paper, all of those things are listed and you can see exactly what you're paying for. Other contractors don't do that.
Right.
There are reasons.
Right. They'll give you a 1-line item and this is what it costs to do that project.
Right.
And sometimes people like one or the other and they feel one or the other is better. And it's not the case. Either one can be fine.
Yeah.
But you need to ask the questions, especially with the ones that are just a one item,
Right.
here's what the price is. You need to know what that entails. What does that mean when it comes to prep work? What are you doing for prep work? What about priming? Are you priming?
Yeah.
Finish paint. How many coats are you planning on putting on? All of those things need to be figured out.
Conversations too to have with them while they're at the house doing the quote. You get an idea of how they work, how many people are going to be at your house, all of those things. How long they've been working in the industry even, really get to know them during that quote
Well, I
process.
think like what you just said is really good too. How many people are going to be in your house?
Yeah.
But who are they
Right.
going to be? Because a lot of the times you'll talk to the main, the person who runs the business, but
Right.
they'll send crews out.
Exactly.
And that's fine. That's all good. That's how most of them work. But it's good to get an idea of who's coming.
Yeah.
So you're not surprised when that person doesn't show up
Yes.
to do the work in the house. Now, other ones, that's the person who shows up and does the work. It's nice to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
It will help you with your decision. And while you're having all of those conversations, the next point, we mentioned it's not just price.
Right.
It's compatibility. You've got to
Totally.
see once how you work with this person because you're bringing this crew, this company into your home, and you want to have somebody that you can really work with and communicate well with. So think about how that went during this process. Think of this as an interview.
It is an interview, and it really does determine, I think, the success of the job because you can have a really great company and they could do a great job, but there's also times where maybe they haven't met someone's expectations. And it all comes down to the communication, I think. If you're not communicating your expectations throughout that job and having those conversations, then that's where things kind of fall off track a little bit.
I'm sure we've all had experiences like this, but I've had, not with painting contractors, I'm talking something else entirely, but I was recommended, you got to go to this place. These are the best people for this. And I've gone. And I felt like they never listened to what I was literally asking. And it was a very bad experience for me.
Sure.
And I decided, after that initial interaction that I wasn't going to go further with this. And I was curious, why did that happen? And it's because some people communicate differently. The person who recommended them to me,
Totally.
it was a great communication style for them. For me, I needed somebody to listen to me. It's a deeply rooted need. And
Isn't that the truth?
I think those people needed somebody who didn't talk so much.
Right.
And we weren't a good fit.
Yeah.
You need to find that out
Yes.
with your contractors. And you can do that in these little meetings where you're getting your quote. But the thing is, when you hire them, it doesn't quit there. You don't quit communicating once you've hired them. You've got to keep going and strike that balance. It's very dangerous. Could be dangerous.
You
It
don't
could be.
want to micromanage them.
That's what I'm getting at. Right. You can really put yourself into the project way too
Yeah.
much. You've got to remember that these are people that you're bringing in who do this on a regular basis. They know what they're doing. They may not do it the way you do it, but they do it for
Probably
a living,
reason.
right?
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. It's really important to convey what you're looking for, concerns, questions that come up, but don't nag. Don't be always over their shoulder.
You don't have to watch them paint the room.
Right, right. Nobody likes that. But you do have to find that balance.
Yeah.
Keep communicating. That's how successful projects become successful. There's no surprises that way, and everybody's happy.
Exactly.
Make sure they're insured.
Yes.
That's a good question to ask.
Someone gets injured on your property, that's not a road that you want to go down if they're not insured.
No, nobody enjoys that process. Litigation is not a good way to figure out how well you communicate with somebody and how you figure out how to finish getting those bathroom cabinets painted. So find out if they're insured ahead of time. One other one before we get to the other two that I've got. What an idiot. I don't even know why I speak. Specify product. What are we talking about there, Haley?
You really do have the power as the person hiring these jobs to be done when it comes to product. If you want Benjamin Moore's Scuff-X to be used because you've heard really amazing things about it, and maybe the contractor that you're talking to, that's not typically what he specs for a living room or a mudroom or the cabinets that you're asking him to paint, that's okay. You can still request that he use that product. It's your job.
Right. Sounds ridiculous, but we've talked to a lot of people in the store who ended up on, projects in the past getting product that they didn't even want. Mm-hmm. And they were surprised to hear that they literally could have held their ground and demanded in a very polite way.
You are paying for that product.
Right.
You're paying for the product that they're purchasing, and you're paying for the labor, right? So it's ultimately your decision. Now, they might have recommendations for specific reasons, and that can be part of the conversation. Definitely if it's a very specific situation and they want to use a specialty product that you don't know about, have that conversation.
Right.
But you can absolutely be a part of that decision-making process, and it doesn't have to just be a blind.
No, if you're not sure what you would use on your particular project,
Right.
by all means, stop out at any RepcoLite. Tell us what you're working on. We can make some recommendations. You can take those to the contractors and start those conversations.
Yes.
And if they have questions, you can send them our way, and we can have some conversations with them as well and try to figure out the best way forward with product and stuff like that. Last thing, this truly is the last thing. If you had a great experience, recommend your contractor. We're at these events, we're hosting lunches, talking to lots of contractors.
Absolutely.
And one of the common things that comes up is that they're unsure how the best way is to market their company. They want to get in the house and do the work. That's what they want to do with their lives. They don't want to be marketing
these
people.
are small businesses, so they don't have a marketing team to be doing all of this stuff for them. They're not going to pay out a marketing firm to do that for them.
They rely on word of mouth.
Exactly.
And if you had a great experience, you can really help small businesses. You can help their small business.
Yep.
And you can make yourself look really brilliant. Right?
True.
I mean, when you're giving out names of people that are going to just be rock solid to friends of yours and all of that, you look like you're absolutely on top of the world. That's what I like to prize. How many, it's a little notch on the wall. That's 5 recommendations that have been good, as opposed to these 12 that haven't panned out very well. No, ask for business cards. If you really like the contractor, worked well with them, they're going to be happy to give them out, and you can disperse those to your friends.
Yeah, they really do depend on that word of mouth.
Absolutely. All right. If you have any other questions about hiring a contractor, swing out to any RepcoLite store. And remember, we've got that form on the website at RepcoLite.com. You can fill it out, and we'll get you some names within 24 hours usually. All right, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about paint finishes. I know it's not terribly fun, but you want to get it right. You want to get the right finish in the right spot. We'll cover all of that, and we'll make it exciting. That's coming up next. Stick around. Well, Haley, let's talk about paint finishes, because that's pretty exciting stuff. I'm sure there are a group of people.
People are definitely waiting on the edge of their seats.
Don't you think? Mm-hmm. I can just picture that, just crowded around, hunched over the radio. It's probably like during World War II times where they're waiting for news to come.
Oh my gosh.
It's like that. Just
Such a dark comparison.
Well,
let's move on very quickly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think it was dark. Is it dark?
I think
maybe
it's
a little.
Kind of dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're one of those people eager for paint finish stuff, good news, we've got it. I know it doesn't sound like a lot of fun to listen to, seriously, but it's really important, and it's one of those things that, as regular people, we don't often think about it. Now, you and I are not regular people, Haley. That doesn't make us better.
No,
I want to clarify.
Not regular.
Yeah,
we're not normal.
Right. Abnormal is one of the ways that gets described.
Yes.
But we live in the paint world is what I'm getting at. So paint finishes, it's just part of our job. It's what we think about.
Yeah, it's second nature at this point.
But I know when regular people come into the store and want to get a gallon of paint or whatever, they've already spent a ton of time figuring out their color.
Right.
And that was stressful enough in a lot of situations.
Sure.
Then they give it to us and they feel like, finally, I'm handing this job off.
Exactly, it's done.
And we look at them and say, okay, what finish do you want that in? And then the whole process starts all over again. They're confused. And the problem or the concern is you want to get the right finish. And we can make recommendations.
Absolutely.
But finishes are very subjective as well. There are a lot of finishes that will work in a lot of situations. And you may like one better than another. So it's really important to understand what each one is.
Or think even that you want a specific finish and not understand the repercussions of that specific
Exactly.
finish.
That's another thing that plays out.
Yeah.
So let's just, in the time that we've got, spin through them as quickly as we can. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. And yes, we've done this before on the show multiple times. If you're a true believer...
People always forget, so...
Right. If you've heard this before... See if we do it right. I mean, maybe that's the way to look at it. Let's start with flat finishes.
Yeah.
Where would you use them? What are the benefits? All of that.
Flat finishes are really just reserved for ceilings in my mind. I know they get used on walls sometimes in commercial settings because they want really easy touch-up, because flat paint touches up the best. It's very easy to just blend right in, but there's essentially no sheen at all.
Right. So it needs to be touched up on a regular
Exactly.
basis. It doesn't resist anything.
You touch it, and now you've got to touch it up. It's really, just the oils from our hands can affect the sheen of a flat paint. So it's not something we put on walls.
Right. Trying to clean it on a wall, clean spots on a wall will burnish it. You'll get shiny spots.
Yep.
That's where it gets touched up. On a ceiling, not a big deal. And in fact, that's what you want is a flat finish.
Right.
So you don't see a lot of imperfections, because that's the big plus of flat is you don't see imperfections. You don't see roller marks. You don't see nail pops and things like that as quickly.
The glare,
hides all of that much better. Does not wash up very well. Great for ceilings. That's a flat finish. The next step up, matte.
Right. People love a flat finish, I think, which is why matte exists, because it's as close as you can get to a flat finish and still have a durable finish on the walls. So it's not quite a flat, it's between flat and an eggshell. You've got just a tiny bit of sheen there, a little bit of resin protecting those solids so that you can touch the wall and you don't have to touch that up, or you can clean the wall and you're still looking at the same sheen rather than a shiny spot now.
Now, I wish we could say that every matte finish from every brand out there
it's created equally
is the same finish, right? But they do vary.
Yes.
We've talked in past weekends about Aura Bath and Spa and Aura from Benjamin Moore. Both Benjamin Moore products, both available in a matte finish.
Yeah.
Aura Bath and Spa is a flatter matte than regular
That's
Aura.
true.
So there are some variances even within, but a matte finish, like Haley said, you get some of that. It hides imperfections a little better than shinier paints, but still washes up.
And you get to kind of soak into the color with a matte. I always consider a matte finish kind of a designer's favorite finish because it's really focused on color.
Yeah, you soak into it without leaving a grimy residue.
Right.
Right? Exactly. All right, let's move up to an eggshell. You mentioned it. It's the next step up. As we go, you're going to get more shine and more washability. So however far we get, wherever we have to quit, the bottom line to understand with all of this is that the shinier you go, the more washability you gain, but it becomes a little trickier to work with because it shows more imperfections.
Yep, that's
just how it plays out. So an eggshell, we see that oftentimes on lots of wall spaces.
It's probably the most popular.
Most popular, yeah.
So living rooms, bedrooms, hallways, even kitchens at this point, there are products that are durable enough in an eggshell to go in those spaces. So we really see that everywhere.
Right. Next step
Satin.
up, satin sheen. Now you're picking up a fair amount of shine.
Yep.
It's super washable. Years back before we had all these different gradations of sheens, I remember we had our Carefree Satin Sheen, and we considered that our kid-friendly paint.
Sure.
This is what you put in a room with kids and stuff like that because it'll wash up like crazy. Now we've got other versions that will still wash up, other sheens that will wash up that are less shiny. So satin sheen, we've seen less and less of that getting used.
As technology has improved, you don't have to have as much shine.
Right. Mainly we see this used on trim, cabinets, things like that, doors. Gives you great durability in those situations without going to a full-blown semi-gloss. A full-blown semi-gloss. So semi-gloss, let's just jump into that. That's shinier yet. And again, that also plays out on doors, trim.
Yeah, it's really reserved for millwork. You're not really going to see that on a wall unless it's very intentional and you have chosen that look.
Right, absolutely. And I've seen spaces where they do that, and yes, you really got to want that.
Yeah, you've really got to want
in order to like that. Yeah, right. Full gloss. That one is what we see on every wall in every surface in every home, right?
No,
rarely see that. That's going to be a lot of industrial type settings.
Right, or maybe a front door,
Right. People will do that. It's not as easy to work with, not as
really
fun to work
typical.
with, but yeah, that walks you through the sheens. I know we flew, but you didn't want us to linger, right? It's not one of those exciting topics, but it is good info.
Yes.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. Whatever you do today, make sure paint's a part of it. All of the RepcoLite stores are open, waiting to help. I'm Dan Hansen.
I'm Haley Johnson. Thanks for listening.